the screen.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the LBN Alumni Association Career Panel. My name is Anushka, and I'll be hosting this event with Robin. We're super excited about it. I've been a volunteer with LBN for over 2 years now, and I'm currently an executive coordinator. I'll now let Robin introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Robin, and I have been an alumni of LBN since 2017, and now I work with the LBN Alumni Association. And we also have Eric and Ian with us today, who will be our facilitators. And so the purpose of our LBN Alumni Association is to help our volunteers navigate post-secondary education and their career fields of interests.
So before we begin to hear from our panelists, I'd like to acknowledge that we're situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. I encourage you to visit native-land.ca to find out whose land you are joining us from and to learn more.
All right, so now we'll let the panelists introduce themselves. All right, so now we have Mackenzie, who's currently a medical student at the University of Saskatchewan. So Mackenzie, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi. Like Robin said, my name is Mackenzie. I'm currently studying medicine at the University of Saskatchewan with an additional certificate in global health. So within LBN, I was, like the screen says, an executive coordinator, recruitment committee member, administrator, and I was a mentor for a few years too. So I was very involved with the organization. I really believe in LBN's mission. My hobbies are skiing, running, and traveling, and you could have found me this morning on the treadmill running way too far for a treadmill run. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm up to lately. Maybe the next person can introduce themselves. I'll pass it back to you, Robin.
All right, and next up we have Maya.
Hello, yeah, I'm Maya. So I graduated from UBC last year with kinesiology and bio, and with LBN was part of the recruitment and engagement team. And I think for myself, something that I'll be talking about a little bit later as well, but I'm a really big believer in hobbies. So like it says on the slide, I have a lot of hobbies, but right now I think my favorite two would be crocheting and sewing.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you so much. And we have Owen next.
Hello, thanks for the introduction, Robin. My name is Owen. I'm the current executive director here at Learning Buddies. As it says here on the PowerPoint, formerly I was the recruitment manager, and I was also the director of operations and programs. I began my journey with Learning Buddies as a volunteer, actually, all the way back when I was a grade 10 student in high school. And then I worked part-time with the organization when I was in university. And then a couple of years after graduating from university, took on this full-time position of executive director. I also do quite like a few hobbies. I like dragon boating, skiing, and reading. I especially like dragon boating. I'm actually now on the water 4 days a week. So I'm there quite a bit, and I'm on a competitive dragon boat team, but I think I'll talk about that a little bit later in this discussion. Back to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Owen. So I'll let Anushka ask some questions.
Sure. So we'll go in the same order. Mackenzie, you can, if you feel comfortable, can you share with us some mental health or self-care tips you found useful throughout university and medical school?
Yeah, for sure. So for me personally, through a lot of trial and error, what I found to keep my mental health kind of in check throughout my education has been routine. Anyone who knows me knows that I wake up at the same time every morning. I do the exact same things. I eat pretty much the same foods, and I go to bed at pretty much the same time every night. And I found that it's helped to kind of decrease the variability in my day, where I have then more brain power to take on other things in my life, like studying or making time for a hobby or things like that. So yeah, so like meal prepping has really been a big factor in that, and cutting down the amount of time I have to cook every day so that, I have the extra time to go for a run in the morning or meet my friends to play squash in the evening or something like that. As a part of that, I think that it's been really important to me to find something to feed my self-esteem that isn't school and grades all the time. I think we get really bogged down by, especially when you're competing to get into another level of schooling like university or post-secondary education, to find something else that you love to do that isn't school. So for me, I've really gotten into running recently, and I've been using that to feed my self-esteem more. It's something else that I can, set a goal and accomplish that isn't so high stakes, because medical school and planning your future and applying for things seems to be a little bit more high stakes. It's also something that isn't as resume focused. It's more something you can do for fun, but it's still an accomplishment and you can still feel good about it at the end of the day. So it's important to find something, whether that's, like Maya does textile art, completing a project, or, like I do, like running. It doesn't matter what you pick, but it's good to have something that feeds your self-esteem. And then my last point was always plan something. I try and do it, like, it depends how bad my week is, every day, or once a week, plan something to look forward to. It doesn't have to be something big, like nobody's going out and buying fancy dinners or buying coffee every day, even though I might do that. Like, plan something small. When I was living in BC, I would always put on my big rubber boots and my rain jacket and go jump in the puddles, and that would be my small thing. Now here it's more like snow angels on my walk to school, but just something small to look forward to, something that's fun, something I like, things that make you feel like a kid again, relaxes the brain a little bit more. But yeah, I think that those things have really helped me take care of myself throughout my education and prioritize my mental health.
Should I go next?
Yes, please.
Okay. Amazing answer, Mackenzie. Thanks. So I think I have 3 points that are a little bit different than what you said. My answer will kind of be first about GPA, then about therapy, and lastly about the people you surround yourself with. So first about GPA, this was really, really important in my life, and so maybe it might be something that resonates with someone here. But when I graduated from high school, I was very GPA focused, and I very much associated my own self-worth with how high my GPA was, and I feel like throughout my university kind of career, through a lot of struggle, I feel like I found out that, your worth is not determined by your GPA, and it's also not determined by a lot of those, maybe stereotypical accomplishments, maybe how it doesn't matter about what prestigious school you go to. It doesn't really matter what your degree is, as long as you're doing something that you really like. And I think, that for me and myself, I found out that when I think of myself, when I was in high school, I used to think, how high is my GPA? That's what I would think, or how many awards do I have? That's what I would think about when I thought of like who I am. But now when I think about myself, I think about my personality. I think about my family and my friends. I think about the things that I value in my life. I value kindness. I value empathy. I think about all my hobbies. And that I think is so much, it's worth so much more than your GPA. And I think once you kind of really start to feel it, it takes a long time, but by taking off that pressure to get a really high mark on any test or any assignment that you do, life is just much better. So hopefully some of that kind of resonates with someone. My next point is about therapy. This is something that I'm going to be talking about a lot because therapy really changed my life. And everyone that I meet, I'm always like, have you thought about therapy? Because I personally think that therapy could be like similar to going to the gym, if you think about it. Because fit people still go to the gym, even if you're not in a mental health crisis. I think that if you have the resources to attend therapy, which usually if you're attending school, you do have those resources, then you should take advantage of that. Because if you learn how to reflect about yourself, then that's something that you can carry on throughout your whole life. I work on lots of things, personal things in my therapy journey, and I think that everyone has their own personalized journey that you might not have access to unless you attend therapy. So big proponent of therapy. My last point is who you surround yourself with. This is like a really short one, but you want to make sure that you surround yourself with people that make you feel good and kind of make you want to be a better person. Because when I first started university, I was in the pre-medical society, and it was full of a lot of toxic people that were very competitive and always asking, what did you get on this test? Where are you volunteering? What kind of research are you doing? And that stressed me out so much. And I didn't realize that until I got new friends and surrounded myself with people that were less competitive and less toxic. And all of a sudden my life, was so much better. So if you can surround yourself with people that you really like and that like you, and that kind of want to lift you up, and you also want to lift them up, it's a much better environment to be around for the rest of your life.
Awesome. Thank you so much to Maya and Mackenzie for sharing their tips. And we have Owen next.
Thanks, Robin. Can I first just say those are such amazing answers? Honestly, both of you gave really, really well thought out answers. Thank you for that. Basically, I just want to repeat everything you said. Like, I think those are all fantastic tips. I'll throw in an addition though, which is something different. For me, one thing that was really important was making sure that I had enough sleep. I think in high school, sometimes I neglected that. There were many nights when I would pull all-nighters to make sure I could get assignments done. That really took a toll on my mental health. Going into university, I had made sure that I at least slept every night and didn't pull any more all-nighters. I do have to admit, some days were a little bit more challenging, and I might have pulled a couple all-nighters during my university career. But with that, still, I would always make sure to save time over the weekend to make sure I could catch up on that sleep log to get enough sleep so I was ready for the next week. I think sometimes that's not something that's talked about as much, but do make sure you find time to get adequate sleep. And that might be different for you. That could be 6 hours, it could be 8 hours. It's different for every person. But find what your needs are and make sure you can commit to making sure you get enough sleep every single night.
All right, awesome. Thank you. These are all really, really great tips. So I guess to transition to the next question, how do you personally maintain a work-life balance? And I guess we'll go back to Mackenzie.
Sure, yeah. I think Owen's tip about sleep is like huge in this question as well. And I think it ties back into what I was saying about routine. I would highly recommend anyone who hasn't read about it, but look up what makes good sleep and how you can be a good sleeper, because it really changes your life. Something about going to bed at the same time every night and waking up at the same time every morning really sets you up better for your week and for your day and helps you get better sleep overall. So I highly recommend that. I like this routine thing keeps coming up because I think that for me personally, it doesn't work for everyone, but for me personally, planning out my day and planning out my week and knowing what's coming and taking down as much variability as I can really helps me feel less stressed when I want to take on things that are more life and less work. For example, if I know I have an assignment due on Friday, but I know that I have Tuesday afternoon off and I plan to do it then and I get it done then I feel less guilty about doing something on the Monday. Maybe before I've had that assignment done, I know I've set aside that time. And so I can enjoy the things I like to do in life without stressing during them, which was huge and took me a long time to figure out and took me a long time to perfect. The other thing that's kind of helped me maintain work-life balance has been being very careful and deliberate about how much I take on and when I take on something new. My general rule of thumb at the start of university, now I know myself a little bit better and know my capacity a little bit better, but at the start of university, I would only take on one new thing per semester. A new thing being like a volunteer commitment or a job or something, not like a tiny, not like something small, like a one-time commitment, but something that spanned the whole semester. And you could set any increment of time that works for you. But I think that system really helped me be deliberate about how I integrated my new activity into my life and made sure that I wasn't taking on a bunch of stuff and then not prioritizing them properly. So it helped me be more focused in each of my activities, and it helped me maintain the rest of my life while taking on something new. So I think that was pretty critical to maintaining my work-life balance as well. And then the last tidbit, I guess, is taking on things that you love will lead to your resume building itself. Like you look at, Maya and Owen and I with LBN, once we took on something in LBN, we realized we loved it and our resumes built themselves. We found new opportunities through LBN. We found community, we networked, we met people, and that built our resumes. And it's all because we found something we really enjoyed doing, and not because we were just working to pad our resumes and taking on whatever came to us. So it's really important. Find something you love to do and everything will fall into place.
All right, thank you so much. Those are so helpful. And we have Maya now.
Perfect. I just want to say that I completely agree with everything that's been said so far. So amazing answers. So I think for myself, this work-life balance, this is something that I think I have had a really long journey with throughout maybe around the past 6 years. And I think I can also, continue to improve probably for the rest of my life. It's an ongoing, I think, kind of journey. But what I've determined so far is just kind of generally about what I value in my life. So first I'm going to talk about how I valued med school. And second, I'll talk about how I valued myself. So first, with regards to med school, this is just something like I wanted to pursue med school, but it could be anything in your life. At one point when I graduated high school, I thought that this was my life's purpose. And I thought that if I didn't get into med school, that my life would be like not worth it or something, right? I was just very stressed out all the time about getting into medical school. And I put a lot of pressure on myself. But then kind of over the past few years, I realized that, going to med school is just one part of my life, just like all my hobbies are, just like seeing my friends are, just like, taking time for myself. These are all things that I value just as much as going to med school because they're all parts of my life that I enjoy and I value, right? And so it might be a small distinction, but in my head, once I was able to kind of bring medical school down off the altar, then it relieved a lot of that pressure for myself. And I was able to just live my life and be happy. So that was one thing for myself. And then the next thing was prioritizing or valuing myself. So for me, my body has a lot of chronic pain and I have a lot of chronic health issues. And so this is something that it's kind of really started over the past 6 years that I've really had to start to listen to myself and listen to my body and prioritize myself. If I know that I need some extra sleep, I need to be able to give that to myself, even if I have something, maybe important coming up. And I have to be able to, check in and see, do I need to stop what I'm doing and go eat something, right? Depending on my energy levels, depending on, I have chronic migraines as well. And that, I have a lot of different triggers for that. One of those being, if I am not kind of like constantly eating. And so, I have to make sure that I take the time to realize that about myself first. And then to also make sure that I'm not just, if I'm in school studying, and I'm forgetting to check in, right? And something that I like to think about is that I am my own best friend. I'm my own biggest cheerleader, and I'm going to be with myself my whole life. So I need to be there to hype myself up all the time. And I need to be the best person taking care of myself because I'm the one that's always here, right? So I think those are the two kind of big things that I do that I think can apply to anyone's work-life balance, even if you don't have like chronic pain, right?
Awesome. Thank you so much for these tips. And right, Owen.
Thanks, Robin. I just want to echo some of the answers that have already been shared. First was Mackenzie's answer about pursuing what you love in order to build your resume instead of doing things just to pad your resume. I really like that. I think that's an important point that I just wanted to echo again. It doesn't necessarily have to be with learning buddies either, right? Lots of organizations out there, lots of charities, lots of nonprofit organizations encourage youth to get involved in order to explore their passions. And that's the fun of volunteering, right? You're not committing to a full-time job, you're not committing to a career. So I would encourage you to go out there, explore what opportunities are available, do what you're passionate about, and then know that eventually that will lead into something that can become a career, and it will help you build your resume. The second thing that Maya shared, prioritizing yourself. Oh, it's so important. I think for me, I really had to listen to what my mind and my body was telling me at multiple points throughout university and throughout my career. What that led to was going to therapy. So there were definite points when things were just too much for me to handle on my own, but I had to take the step back to recognize that I was going through a burnout phase, or that I was putting too much on my plate and that I needed some help. And at the end of the day, it was completely okay to go out and seek help. And that was what was then the motivation to help me get back on the right track, and the guidance and support that I needed. Okay, so now a couple more answers to how I maintain a work-life balance. First, from a career standpoint, really take dedicated time off and make sure that is time that you're taking off. Don't work during the time that you take off. Haha. Definitely make sure to turn off your notifications and put I guess, systems in place so you can take that step away, whether that be an out of office reply or having another staff member step in for you so that you're able to really shut things off and step away completely. The second thing I had here was make time for your friends and family. I think for me, definitely finding, especially when I'm really busy, it's really hard for me to take time out of my work schedule if I didn't have it blocked off beforehand. So one thing I am now currently doing is I have a chunk of time dedicated each week just to getting dinner with my mom and dad. So I think it's really important that you carve out time specifically for your family and your friends, and making sure that you stick to those commitments, no matter how busy your work week is. And the last thing I had, personal passion of mine, is that I really like traveling. So for me, maintaining a work-life balance is just traveling lots whenever I get the opportunity to. Some of the travel that I do does involve work, but even those trips I think are really fun, and it allows me to explore a bit of my passion while also getting a bit of work done. And for you, my recommendation would be try to go out and travel if you're able to, if you're in that position. And it doesn't even have to be somewhere far. It can just be a step away outside of the city that you're in. You can go on a road trip to somewhere close by. Just taking a step away from the place that you're in every single day does help to put your mind in a different mindset. Then you come back to work more re-energized.
Thank you. Those are all really great answers. So I appreciate all of you sharing. The next question is, what was your path like to finding your passion? And can you talk about both failure and success in this context? Mackenzie?
Yeah, I can try. So I think to answer this question properly, I have to kind of go back and like explain my journey to where I am now. So I grew up in Regina, Saskatchewan, and I went to high school there, and I got involved with some advocacy in high school. I've always been extremely outspoken, and I think that served me well, but I always wanted to go into something where I could advocate for others who did not feel as comfortable speaking out as I did, because it's never scared me. So I started there, and I started with wanting to find a career where I could advocate for people. And initially, at least for me, when I thought of advocacy, I think of a lawyer. So for a long time in my high school, I wanted to go into law. I thought, okay, like that makes sense. You get to advocate for people every day. It's, a well-respected career, which was important to me. And I thought, okay, perfect. But the more I learned about law and the more I learned about science, I realized that that might not be the best fit for me, even though it aligned with the value I wanted in a career, which was advocacy. It didn't fulfill my interest and my passions, which were more on the science side of things. So then next, I got involved with working in kind of the literacy sector in collecting books for students in Regina's inner city who didn't have access to libraries, especially during the summer. What was happening was they were in school all year, and then they'd come home for the summers, and their reading levels would decline because they didn't have books at home they wanted to read, or they didn't have a library they could access in their neighborhood, or mom and dad didn't have the reading level to teach them or help them with their work, and they didn't have the time to sit down with and read with them. So I started getting involved with that through the United Way. And through that, I was able to learn about the intersection between what you might have heard of as social determinants of health and like our healthcare system. So for me, that really sparked my passion specifically for the interaction between literacy and health. So literacy impacts your whole life, really, in every way, because it determines your accessibility to a lot of things, including healthcare. If you don't have this literacy, it's a lot harder to advocate for yourself within our healthcare system, and then even beyond in the greater world. So that kind of sparked my interest, along with, taking these biology science classes that I thought, okay, maybe I should go into healthcare. So I started down that path, and that led me out to BC to do a degree, a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Physiology at SFU. And then it led me out here to Saskatchewan. So I think what you can take away from that is that when you're deciding what you're passionate about and you're deciding on your career, think first really broadly about what you value and what you're looking to get out of it. So for me, I wanted to be an advocate. And so I wanted to find a career where I could advocate for people. So that was priority number one. And I think then the next thing you should look at is kind of, what are you passionate about? For me, it was science. For me, I loved my science classes. I loved to study. I loved to learn. And I knew that going into medicine, that would be something I would get to do for the rest of my life. And then the last thing is kind of like, what do you want your life to look like? Maybe you want to be an entrepreneur, and then you can work, 9 to noon, and you've got all this independence and you're good to go. Maybe you want to be working with kids all day and you don't want to work with adults. You want to be involved with somebody's early life. You have to look at kind of what you want to do, not only during work, but also outside of work, to kind of build the life that you want. Because your passion, this like path to finding your passion, doesn't just include your career. It also includes your passions outside of your career and outside of your education. And you have to make sure you prioritize those equally. So once you kind of figure this out, what you value, what you want your work life to be like, and what you're interested in, you can kind of start to narrow down and think of careers that might appeal to you. And I would encourage you, when you're doing this, don't get bogged down by the fact that, others' path to the career you're looking into might look different than yours. Everybody in medical school has failed things at some point, and everybody in law school and everybody in every sector fails things all the time. I mean, we just had an exam last week. Lots of people failed. It's no big deal. We just get back up, try again. Your path doesn't have to look like everyone else's, but it does have to work for you. And there's an opening and an opportunity for you in whatever you choose to do. So just, stay the course and keep going and find something that you think, man, I could see myself doing that.
I can go next. Okay. So I will also kind of talk about my whole journey from, high school up until university, deciding that I wanted to go into medicine. But for me, when I was in high school, I was really torn between a music degree and a biology degree. And it's so interesting because, when I was so young at the time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think that's so normal. I just want to really tell everyone that if you don't know what you want to do, that's okay. And a lot of what I'm going to say is what I figured out throughout the past 6 years, right? So it might be different. It's different for everyone, like Mackenzie said. So, but when I was in high school, I was thinking about biology because I took Bio 12, which was anatomy and physiology, and I loved it. But I also was in band, and I loved band. And my dad's a drummer, so I was drumming. I did percussion, and I loved it so much, I didn't know what to do. But I thought to myself, would I be satisfied doing, biology on the side, learning this as a hobby, or would I be more satisfied learning music and art on the side and having, biology be my main career, or what I'm like predominantly studying? And that's what I decided. For myself, I also thought it would be a little bit easier for me to learn just a little bit of music, which is what I was happy with, versus if I was learning biology on the side, I thought that would be a little bit more difficult for me. So that's what I decided when I was in high school. And then going into university, I did a kinesiology degree. It was kind of random when I chose to do kinesiology, but I wanted to kind of just very quickly lay out what the difference between kinesiology and biology was, just because I also minored in biology. So kinesiology is about the movement of humans. And this can be at a societal level, or this can be at the cellular level. It goes all throughout. And biology is about, every single living thing. Okay, so it's very, very broad. And not only will you be learning about, humans, I'm sure, but you can also be learning about all sorts of animals and plants. So that was just something that I didn't know going into university. And I would like to pass on that knowledge because I found that a lot of people that are a little bit younger are also a little bit confused about that. So I understand. But once I got into university, then it was honestly pretty unremarkable because I just happened to be very interested in every single class I took that was about the humanity. And so I love helping people. And so it was very easy for me to decide that I wanted to go into medicine. But I think that, a very important point that I want to say is that you should always keep an open mind, even when you have decided on something for a career, for example, because you want to be able to have the ability to, if you see something else that you might be interested in, to actually consider that that could be an option. If you're straight dead set on going into medicine, as a lot of people who are, pre-med are, then maybe if something else came along, you would be, that you would actually be happier doing, you wouldn't even consider it, right? So this is something that I think I always try to do and keep an open mind. And I also let everyone know who's maybe going into university that it's very easy to change your degree. Okay, if you are in one faculty and you want to change into a different faculty, it's not impossible. It's definitely possible. I know a lot of people that have changed their faculty or their degree multiple times. It's okay. So if you're not sure with what major you're choosing, it's okay. You can change your mind. Same with your career, right? It's okay. You can quit a job and you can have a new job. You can go back to school, right? Like whatever you decide on, you can always change your mind because there's so many options. So I just want to kind of set that out there for everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Noah. Wow, those are amazing answers. For me, for this question, I think I'll talk about the nonprofit sector and how I got involved in this sector as my passion. But before I jump into that answer, I do want to touch very briefly on a few points. First, just echoing that it's completely okay for you if you're at this stage in your life to not know what you're wanting to do yet. Quite honestly, I don't even know. At this point, I have so many options, and it's hard for me even to pick what it is that I want to stick with for an entire career. But the other point I wanted to echo is that it's okay to change careers and to change what you're studying and to find different passions throughout your life. I think especially in our day and age, it's very uncommon to stay in the same job for multiple decades. There are lots of people who switch careers, even working professionals. So do keep that in mind and know that you're not sticking to something for your entire life. And don't be afraid to go out and explore different passions. Okay, so now coming back to the nonprofit sector, a lot of people don't know this, but my first job in this space, in the sector, wasn't actually with Learning Buddies. So I started my career sort of when I was in high school. I was hired as a summer intern for the Britannia Heritage Shipyard Society. And this was when I was 15. It was quite honestly because I was volunteering at a booth, and then at the booth were the general manager and the president of the society. And they were at the time hiring for a summer student. So I didn't really have a resume, but I put one together, submitted it, and then I was fortunate enough to get that position. From there, I learned a lot about nonprofit governance. I attended an annual general meeting. I saw what it was like to work in the sector, but more than that, I saw how passionate people were in that field. The people who I worked with, even in the office space that I was in, were just so fun to be around. And I saw that they were just kind, passionate people. And that's what really made me appreciate the work in this space. From that, I then worked as a volunteer coordinator and an events and program coordinator for a few different nonprofits, always throughout the summers between university and high school. But then when I was in university, in my third year, I signed on as a part-time staff member with Learning Buddies Network. Again, this was also something that was really special because at the time I was approached by program committee members who are, at the time, they were board members who were picking volunteers from within the organization to sit on the program committee. I was fortunate enough to be one of those volunteers. And from there, they then basically approached me and asked if I wanted to take a job. So I think that speaks to the point earlier about how if you pursue your passions, it'll naturally lead to opportunities that will help you build your resume. And then from there on, I've just kind of stuck around Learning Buddies for so long. I've done so many things here and opportunities have just continued to be handed to me. So it's quite honestly been pretty amazing. I've been very, very privileged and very fortunate to have been in this organization for so long. And it's mostly thanks to the incredible board that we have with how open they are to youth leadership and to having youth have the space to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes while also helping to grow and shape the organization from a youth-led perspective. I think that's really special. And again, I just want to echo, we're not the only nonprofit out there that's like this, but I will say Learning Buddies is a very, very special place. And from my so far view of the field, we are an incredibly healthy organization. So it is, if you are looking to stay around, I'd very much encourage it. Okay, back to you, Robin or Anushka.
All right, thanks so much, Mackenzie, Maya, and Owen. These are so insightful. I'm like jotting down mental notes. So my last question for you guys is, can you share with us some career-specific tips? So for example, what's maybe something that you wish someone had told you before starting your university or career life, or anything else that you can think of? And we'll go back to Mackenzie.
Sure, I have so much to say on this topic, so I'm gonna try and keep it brief. I think like the first thing I would say is as a reminder, my career, I guess now, is medicine. So my first tip would be like really figure out why you're going into this career. It's really not a place to go if you want to just make money or what have it. It's a long road and you're not really fairly compensated until quite later in your journey into medicine. So if this is something you want to do, make sure you're doing it because it's one of the only careers you could see yourself doing, or there's something you value that you'd be able to do while being a doctor. Really think of your reason for going into the career. It's not for everyone. And now being in medical school, you can definitely see who is having moments of, oh, I went into this for the wrong reason. So really think through why you're pursuing what you're pursuing, because not only will that, help you narrow down what you want to do, but it will also make sure that you end up doing what you're supposed to end up doing. And then the other thing with medicine is I think for me, I've had to be really careful about not setting these time goals in the sense of like, okay, in this year, I'm going to be done this, and then I don't have to study as much anymore. And then I'll move on to this. And then by, 2032, I'll be a real doctor and yada, yada, so on and so forth. And life just doesn't work out like that. if with an education as long as mine, you kind of have to love the journey. As a doctor, you never stop studying. I mean, if you talk to doctors, they'll be like, oh yeah, I was in Hawaii for vacation, but I read that journal article and I still kept up on this and I kept up on this. Like it has to be a passion of yours, and it has to be something you love doing, you love learning, because medicine is so innovative and it's ever adapting. So you have to want to keep learning throughout your career, and it can't just be like, oh, I'll get this degree and then I'll move on. And I think that applies to a lot of other fields. It's important to develop this curiosity so that you can keep learning for the rest of your life, and you can develop a love of learning. The next thing I'm going to say, like, I think in the start of my pre-med journey, as Maya kind of talked about, it's really easy to get bogged down by what other people are doing to get into medical school. Oh my God, this person started a nonprofit, or this person has a 4.0 GPA. They've never gotten below 95 on a test, or, yada, 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 or vice versa. Like, I just got a C- in this class. Now I'm never going to get in. Or, I could only volunteer at the hospital with 300 of my friends and I'll never get in if I'm doing what everyone else is doing, and so on and so forth, spiral. And it's just not true. I'm somebody who has a couple C's on my transcript and I got into medical school just fine. It's not about it's not so much about what you do, and it's more about who you are and why you're going into it and how bad do you want it. So I think, like, just remembering that there's no right way to go into any career, and there's no perfect application to any kind of post-secondary. And the reason schools want you is because you're unique, and because your journey is different, and because you've, overcome that D on your transcript, and you started volunteering at the hospital, but then you moved on to do this and bigger and better things, and you met this person and they brought you into this. As long as you are a kind person and you prioritize what you love, it's all going to figure itself out at some point, and you're going to end up where you want to end up. So the other layer to that is, like, ignore this fear mongering. There's a lot of fear mongering when it comes to post-secondary school and medical school. Like, everyone thinks it's going to be the worst thing ever, and you're going to be dying and you'll never sleep again, and nobody's succeeding, and everybody has to lose all their hobbies. And it's just not the case. I have said it before and I'll say it again. I am the least busy I've ever been in medical school. And, maybe that's in part because medical school is a pass-fail. There's other factors, but I think it's also because you learn to prioritize the things that are important to you, and you'll figure it out, and you'll figure out how to have work-life balance. And then, taking on all these things that you love won't feel so scary. So, take on new things and judge them for yourselves. Don't let other people's opinions about how bad they're going to be or how scary they are cloud your judgment about what you're going into, because you might end up like me, and you might end up thinking, wow, this is the healthiest life I've had in a while. And then the last thing, like, just to cap it off, is stop sharing your grades with people. It really bums you out in the long run. I have a very strict policy, like, I'm not going to ask your mark, and I'm not going to tell you my mark. It just takes away the competition. It's not really healthy to compete like that on that level with your friends for most people. For me, it was really hard on my mental health to hear, like, oh, this person's consistently doing better than me, but I'm working really hard and I'm doing my best. It's just better to, look at what you've accomplished in life and compete against yourself and prioritize other things besides worrying about, what Johnny Appleseed, who's extremely smart, is doing over there. It's just not worth your time. You can put that time into working towards your goals. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay. So I also feel like I have a lot to say about this. I feel like all of us could probably just go on forever. So I'll also try and keep it kind of concise. But I think I just want to first reiterate that it's so important to be yourself, like what Mackenzie was saying. You know, be yourself and don't try to be someone that you're not. So be yourself and love who you are, right? You know, you're the only person in the world that's you. So that's amazing. And you should really value yourself for being that. Okay, so on to some other points. So I have been in research for over 4 years now, and I just want to let everyone know, depending on, you know, if you're in science or not, depending on what your kind of faculty is or your degree, sometimes research can be thought of as a very prestigious thing or something that you need to have depending on what career you're going into. And I just want to let everyone know that research is not for everyone. It's not for me. And, you know, I happened to be a lab that I really liked, but I knew that I did not want to do it longer than like for a career after I graduated. And so I, you know, at one point was thinking about writing a thesis, which is, you know, pursuing a master's. When you, just to make it clear for some people, when you pursue a master's, which is after you graduate from university, there's two different types. One is a course-based master's, which is kind of like an additional degree at university, and another one would be a thesis-based master's. And a thesis-based master's is when you do your own research and you write a big document, and that's your whole degree. So and research is usually thesis-based masters. And I just want to let everyone know that that is not for everyone. It's not for me, and I don't think it's for a lot of people. So really make sure before you want to do something like that, that you really look into like how much you would actually value and add to your life. Okay, so next, I wanted to tell everyone that if you want to email someone very important or someone that you don't actually have a close connection with, maybe you're looking to get, you know, an audience with someone like a PI, which is someone that has a lab, or a professor or something like that, and you're not in their class. If you want to get their attention, email them multiple times and don't be afraid to be loud in your emails. Obviously be professional and polite, but in the subject line, you can say, you know, second follow-up, third follow-up, fourth follow-up. And if you email them enough times, they'll get back to you. That's a really important thing. And how I think you can get a lot, you can kind of stand out compared to other people. You know, if you just email someone once, these people are getting hundreds of emails a day. And if you don't stand out, they're not going to respond to your email. But if you email them 5 times and you say fifth follow-up, they're going to notice it and they might click it. And then you might be able to, you know, have a call with them. So that's another point. And my last point that I've already talked about is therapy. So I just want to, you know, reiterate one more time that I think therapy could be for everyone. And I know that, you know, it's not part of our universal healthcare in Canada right now, but if you do have the resources, you know, in post-secondary schools, usually they have some sort of coverage for their students to either get reimbursed or to go to some sort of university-based or, you know, college-based therapy. And so I highly recommend that everyone try it. And I just want to tell everyone that when you do try therapy, you know, sometimes you have to shop around for a therapist that really connects with you. The first person you go to, just like all the people you meet on the street, not all of them are going to be your friends, and not all of them are going to be, you know, all these therapists that you meet, and not all of them are you going to connect with. So you have to find someone that values the same things as you and is able to talk about things that you also want to talk about, right? So, or just generally has the same mindset. So once you find that person, really try and pursue it. I just highly recommend to everyone. You know, it's changed my life. I've got a lot of my friends and people in my life to attend therapy, and I've seen such big positive changes in their life. And I just want that for everyone in the world, right? So I highly recommend attending therapy if you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Amazing answers. Oh my gosh. Quite honestly, I could speak for like an hour at this point. But like Maya said, I will try to summarize some key points here. I do want to echo a couple of points here and add a bit to it. So I'll try to structure my answer here. Sorry, I'm thinking aloud here, but I'll try to structure my answer while also touching on these points. So first, one of the tips I wanted to give was when you enter university, so starting from that first stage of this career, try to find a group of friends who share similarities to you and who you can rely on. To Mackenzie's point earlier about not competing with grades with the Johnny Appleseeds who have high grades and want to compete with everyone, try to avoid those people, right? Try to find people who are collaborative, who are supportive, who are bright, intelligent, who you can see yourself working well with, and who you can see yourself fitting in with. And that's a really important part of what you should aim for in that first year of university, because those are the people you could stick with throughout your entire university career. Second to that, research. So my great points. I was also in research for a little bit. I was in a psychology lab at UBC. Amazing place, and it was a fantastic lab. But from that, I also learned that research was not for me. It was very challenging. It requires a lot of dedication, and you have to be passionate about the field that you're in or the topic that you're researching to not burn out in that field. And I have seen people burn out when they don't have that passion and drive and sense of purpose. So if you are considering research, I would say a really good tip for this is to speak to professors. I know it can seem really daunting and intimidating and scary. What I like to convince people with is that if you were to think of a child going up to you to ask you for your advice on your life, what would you feel, right? Would you think, oh my God, leave me alone? Or would you think, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Of course, I'd love to share. And I would be so open to telling you a little bit to help guide you in your journey. When you look at professionals, they have the same mindset, whether that's a professor, a colleague, a board member, they want to share their lessons and they would find it to be a privilege to be able to share that information with you. So keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to approach these people to ask what their experience has been like. Back to the research point, principal investigators, so the people at who operate and direct labs, they are incredibly passionate about their fields of study. When you speak with them, and if you want to pursue research, you will hear firsthand about why they're doing it and what gets them to get out of bed every day. And the stories they share are just remarkable. So do explore that option first before you decide to veer away from it completely. Okay, now third, I will talk about the nonprofit sector. If you're looking for a career in this space, one tip, first from a more, I guess, practical standpoint, if you're in high school or in university, a good place to start looking for jobs is on the Canada Summer Jobs website. So there, a lot of charities and nonprofits post what are called Canada Summer Jobs. They're very short-term jobs that are only over the summer. You can take as many as you want over multiple summers, and it's a great way for you to get a job and explore different nonprofits, different jobs, and different organizations, and different purposes and different missions. So there's that. Second, I would say if you're looking for a career in the nonprofit sector, starting small, starting in a small nonprofit will give you a lot of opportunities. As I spoke about previously at Learning Buddies, because we're such a small team here, I've had to wear many hats throughout my professional career. But with that, I've learned so many things. And I'm sure Maya and Mackenzie have as well from being my colleagues. It is very difficult though. So on the flip side of this coin, small nonprofit work, wearing those many hats is also very challenging, time consuming, and it can be a lot of work. So do be ready for that. The alternative is if you work for a bigger charity, a bigger nonprofit, there might be more structure, but with that, there's often less opportunity and less room for growth. You might see yourself stuck in one job for a couple years before you're promoted to the next job, and it's often harder for you to switch from one job to another. Versus when you're in a small charity, I have a colleague who switched from being our administrator to being our communications manager, who is now helping us plan an appreciation event for 150 volunteers. So see, there's lots of room for opportunity, and you can just try and play around and explore your passions within those small charities. Okay, those are all my tips.
Nice. Oh, sorry. Thank you all for your great insight. It was a really great discussion and conversation. I know I learned a lot. I can now open the floor to any questions. Eric or Aya or Ian or anyone. You guys have questions for each other?
With respect to therapy, there's different sorts of therapy, and I'm particularly set on positive psychology, which is about identifying your strengths and how to build on them rather than what's wrong with me and how can I fix it. So Maya and Mackenzie, do you want to talk about the sort of therapies that you chose?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think that, that's something that if you're not in therapy, you might not actually know. But there are so many different approaches, and different therapists are often trained in different types of approaches into therapy. So there's nature-based therapy that I've tried. I've tried art therapy. There's obviously the cognitive behavioral therapy that most, I think, clinicians are, or I guess counselors are trained in. But I think some of my favorite is just that talk therapy, just for me being able to vocalize a lot of my thoughts. My thoughts are kind of all going crazy in my head, and being able to vocalize them in a more of a linear stream is really helpful for me to be able to work through my thoughts. And hearing someone else on the other side being able to validate my thoughts is very important to me. But something that I really liked was that art therapy, using different types of art strategies in order to maybe not vocalize your thoughts but get out your emotions in a different way. Or something that I have only tried once, but I have a friend that really has liked it, is that nature-based therapy, where you go out into like the outdoors. And especially in BC, we have a beautiful, across Canada, I guess, a beautiful landscape to do nature-based therapy, where you can kind of connect with the environment while also being able to give an outlet to your emotions or your feelings, right? So I think that depending on what you want to look for, different therapists are able to specialize in different either topics or approaches to what they kind of how they deal with the different topics. And so when you're looking for a therapist to try and connect with, make sure that you do look into their profile. There's I think online, I'm not sure if other provinces have this, but I know that there's therapistbc.com. I think it's literally just that. You can look at profiles of all of the therapists that are registered in BC and see what they're trained in, what they value, and if they have a website, you can see their preferred times. If you want the evenings, you can see their gender, like usually, or their age, and you can see all this information about what they're trained in, what their approaches are, and you can decide if that's someone you would want to reach out to. So there's a lot of information on the internet.
Thank you so much. Very helpful. If I may, one thing I'd share, like I was a scientist, a biochemist, so I grew up with a very analytical mindset, and I dismissed my emotions and my spirituality, and I felt that they're sort of invalid. And I think it's really important for, especially if it's a sort of medical or scientific area of life, to really accept your emotions and work with them, and also to have some sort of awareness of spirituality, whatever it may mean to you. So the science tends to dismiss things and to encourage an inclusiveness of awareness, and the really integration, all the different sort of, and social life as well. So we're much broader than the lab would tell us. And and the research thing, you're all researching, but you're not in a lab. And so with the skills you learn in the lab, you do learn you don't want to be a researcher, but you do learn how to do research. Thank you.
I just want to add on as well, actually, to what Ian just said. I think it's really important, just like if you think about in North America, often it's a very westernized concept to when you are in pain. And this is something that I've really considered a lot just with my own health issues. When you say that you're in pain, often people will immediately think of physical pain. And when you go to the doctor, people often only go to the doctor for that physical pain. But there's a lot of other ways that your body might be in distress. And like Ian was saying, there's spiritual, right? There's that physical, like we might think. There's also mental, emotional. There's a lot of different spectrums of where you can kind of improve your wellness with regards to your body's health. So if you have the time and the resources, I would highly recommend kind of pursuing that.
Yeah, often the cause of the pain is not in the body, it's somewhere else in your personality or life.
Yeah, I'd like to add to just on the topic of therapy, because I think like my journey through therapy was a little unique. I accessed a therapist through like Simon Fraser University. They have a program called My SSP that basically links you with a therapist, and they can be anywhere in the world, really. And so you set up these like phone appointments. So mine, for example, was in Ontario. and it's a random pairing. So there is some trial and error in like, texting their service again to be like, oh no, this person didn't quite work for me. I'd like to try someone else. But it means that it's a lot lower stakes. At least it felt lower stakes for me to just like reach out, I'll call this person. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to pay anything. And I'll see if this therapy thing works for me. Because the way I work through my stigma about therapy was that like, okay, I'm getting this free service. Like, why wouldn't I do it? If like, who turns down something that's free? And so university therapy is really nice for that because you can justify it to yourself like that. Like, why would you ever say no to something that's free? You might as well do it. And then earlier Maya mentioned like, it's like gym for your brain. Like I always call therapy brain gym because there's so much less stigma attached to brain gym than there is to therapy. But like you go to the gym all the time, you're always outside, you're running, you do whatever you do to stay active. Why do you not take any time to take care of your brain too? You should take care of your brain, especially when you have the privilege in university that you have free access to these services, because that doesn't last forever. Now I'm at a university that it's way harder to access therapy. So if you go to a school where you have that opportunity, take advantage of it, because who turns down something that's free?
Can I add to this answer? Just really briefly, I would like to share another analogy similar to brain gym. I think of going to therapy as getting my car fixed. And if you think about that, you don't bring in your car when it's broken and you can't drive it, right? You take your car in for tune-ups once a year or once every 6 months. And it's something you have to do in order to maintain the running of that vehicle, right? You don't want to go get your car checked after it's too late and the engine can't start. And then you have to get a tow truck to come haul your car out of your garage, drive it to the auto body shop, and get a full tune-up of your entire engine. It's better to do more frequent tune-ups throughout the entire year. A second to that, I wanted to share a few more resources. For me, and I'll share a bit about my journey. For me, when I was finding a therapist, it was important for me to find someone who was similar to me. I think there were a lot of cultural traumas that I experienced that I wanted to be able to share with someone who could relate to me. Thankfully, my parents were really, really great. They actually went out, called a bunch of people, and then identified multiple therapists for me. Similar to others' experiences, I had to go see multiple therapists before finding the one that I related to most, that I ended up staying with and who I still see to this day. There's a resource out there called the Asian Mental Health Collective. If you're Asian, they do have a therapist directory for both the United States and for Canada. But I think Maya also pointed to other directories where you can look up gender, possibly ethnicities as well, just so you can find someone that's relatable to you. Two more resources. If you're at UBC, there's a resource called Campus Lightbox. It's sort of a directory, but not to individual counselors, but to all the counseling services that the university offers. And it also breaks it down if it's free for students or paid. So if you're at UBC, I definitely encourage you to check that resource out. And then last, I do have to share a disclaimer that this is not something that Learning Buddies is promoting, but there is a free online program called Bounce Back, offered by the Canadian Mental Health Association. It is a cognitive behavioral therapy-based workbook series where you get to go through workbooks with a counselor who calls you, I think, 6 to 8 times over the course of either 4 to 6 months. It's completely free. It's accessible, I think, to adults and youth, but tailored specifically to youth. And it's available to anyone in British Columbia. Okay.
Yeah, so this, thank you for all these comments. It's just wonderful. One of the things, there's a sort of, you're specialists and you're generalists, like Maya, Mackenzie, and Anushka as well. Owen, you're generalists. You have a big view of life. You're into all sorts of things, and it's a different life journey being a generalist because there's no curriculum, there's no graduation. It just keeps on unfolding, and you keep on discovering. So as well as your specialty, you know, the degree and the qualifications, there's a generalist, a big life track that's a huge part of your passion, purpose, and success. And I think part of the richness of learning buddies is that the people that are in our community are very broad, very eclectic, very interesting people, very healthy, and very engaged with life.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all these insightful stories about yourself. And I think there's some common themes and with the unique things that you guys shared as well, like following your heart and doing things out of your own interest, and really just looking after yourself. So thank you so much for sharing everything. And I guess Anushka, is there anything else you want to add? And then we can conclude the this recording. All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. That concludes our panel discussion.
Thank you for hosting.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Are we good?